Tonight's class is for Refuah Shlema, for Fariba Adar Bat Rina, Abraham Bat Tova, Vahida Bat Shamshi, Yosef Elimelech Ben Yehudis. Sha'akadosh Baruch Hu yitein lahem refuas hanefesh, refuas haguf, hashta b'golav izman kariv v'noimar amen. Amen. Continuing with the story of Isaac and his two children.
What page?
We are on page 127. Last we visited our characters. Isaac had married Rivka, and Rebecca was pregnant, and she was experiencing a pregnancy that was unlike anything that she had been told pregnancy would be like, and unlike anything that she was told was normal. And the pregnancy was violent at times, and she had gone, we spoke about that last week, and she went to find out why she was experiencing this pregnancy. Last week we delved into the nature of women a little bit. And at the end of the term she gave birth, and there were twins. And the name of one was Esav. He was the firstborn. He had come out red and hairy, and Jacob was then born. And Jacob came out holding on to the heel of Esav. Just interestingly enough, on a side note, you asked if they were paternal or fraternal twins, if they were identical twins or not. So you could actually, there are some that try to prove from here that biologically they had to have been identical, because if they were not identical twins, then they would not have shared the same embryonic sac, and there's no way that physiologically he could have come out holding on to the heel of his brother. Yeah, isn't that nice? So the lads grew up. So Jacob and Esav have been born. Last week I said I wanted to touch on just a little bit before we continued with the story, and we didn't get it. We didn't have enough time last week, but I'll just touch on it now. Last week I mentioned that I wanted to speak about this concept of nature versus nurture. That can a person say, but this is just who I am. This is the way I was born. And we see that Esav, already from the womb, already when he was in his mother's womb, Esav was demonstrating characteristics that were not the greatest and healthiest of traits. And sure enough, he's born and he will continue to live that way. So was it predetermined, predestined that this was who he was going to be? Well, there's another individual in our history, if anyone knows who it is, that was also described in the Jewish Bible, in the Tanakh, as being red and hairy. As being red. King David. David HaMelech. I'm trying to use English a lot, just forgive me because of our global audience. But, so I'm going to be using English more often now. But King David was also described as being red, and red being a fiery, violent personality, as we're going to see. Esav is going to embody that. So, David HaMelech did not become that, and yet he was described as that. You have to understand that we are all born. The Rambam, one of the greatest philosophers and thinkers in Jewish history, the Rambam, Maimonides, he writes in his compendium, the Mishnah Torah, he writes in the first section, he writes, where does character traits come from? Where do we get our identity? And he says that a person gets their character traits from a few different places. Some of them we are born with. Some of them come naturally to us. We're not born with them, but we have an affinity towards them. Some of them we just get by osmosis. We grow up around them. We're surrounded by them. And then the last area, and the most infrequent, but yet what should be the most frequent area, are those character traits which we choose to adopt and integrate into our persona. All of those character traits are not necessarily good nor bad. Just because a person's born with a character trait doesn't mean it's either good or bad. It just means that's what you're born with. And on the opposite end, just because a person decides to take on a character trait doesn't mean necessarily that that's a good character trait. A person can decide to take on a character trait because they've convinced themselves that this is a character trait that is beneficial to them in business. This is a character trait that will advance them in society. And often those character traits that people choose specifically for those reasons are often not good character traits. They're usually manipulative and somewhat aggressive. The Torah tells us, and Judaism tells us, that character traits are within our control. And those character traits have to be analyzed and have to be directed. And just because a person is born, there's a famous pop song now I keep hearing about because I was born that way that people like to use. That just because you're born a particular way does not mean that that's okay. Doesn't mean that that's the way you should or shouldn't be. So just because Esav was born with this aggressive personality doesn't mean he should remain that way. David HaMelech, King David, was born with that very same character trait. And he does not remain that way. And the reason is in the scripture we are shown an insight into how we're supposed to deal with it. Because we're going to see that it says by King David, Vayomer David el libo. And David said to his heart. Whereas other character traits, Esav, Vayomer Esav bil libo. And Esav said in his heart. That you see that a person who allows his heart to dictate who he should or shouldn't be is a person that's acting out of emotion, is a person acting from a reactive state, and that is not the way a person should be. A person should be proactive. A person should dictate to their heart what emotions they should or shouldn't have. And therefore, just because Esav is born this way does not mean that therefore it's predetermined. No one is predetermined who they are. The only thing that is predetermined in Judaism, and it is good to know this, the only thing that is predetermined is who you can be, not who you are. The potential that every single one of us has to achieve greatness, that is already predetermined. Every Jew, every human, but every Jew specifically has been pre-programmed to achieve a level of greatness. And that is within your ability. That is the only thing that's predetermined. The only question that remains is whether you choose to achieve it or not. Yeah.
What do you mean it's already predetermined? So
that you have that ability.
You can't go further than that?
No, person, that you have the ability to achieve greatness. How can you go greater than greatness?
No, but you're saying, well, I thought you meant like there's a limit to how much you... Okay.
No limit. Okay, so the lads grow up, and Esav became one who knows trapping. He became a hunter, a man of the field. But Jacob was a wholesome man, dwelling in the tents. Esav loved Esav, for game was in his mouth. But Rebekah loved Jacob. There is so much insight in that paragraph that we need to talk about.
Yeah. Isaac loved Esav.
Isaac loved Esav. Yes. How is it possible that Isaac, our forefather, a man of tremendous insight and wisdom, loved Esav, and Rebekah loved Jacob? Well, we have to delve into this now. So it says the lads grew up, and Esav became one who knows trapping. He became a Yodei Tzayid. He became a hunter, a man of the field. Jacob was a wholesome man. And Isaac loved Esau. And it says, for game was in his mouth. What does that mean? For game was in his mouth.
Knowledge, meat.
No, literally. Hunting. Literally.
Riding them?
Because he was a hunter with his mouth. So on the very simple level, and then we'll go a little deeper. On a simple level is Esau knew how to manipulate. Esau understood the game. He was a hunter. That's what a hunter is. A hunter understands game. A hunter, not just game in the literal translation of animals, game, but the game of life. He understood how to manipulate. He understood that ridiculous book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's got to be the most manipulative book ever written. It's like how to literally manipulate people. He understood how to manipulate. He understood Isaac cares about X. And therefore, you know what? I will try to impress my father with X. He would ask his father questions that would imply to his father that he cared about the very things that his father cared about. He didn't care, but he understood that if I engage my father in this conversation, then that's going to let my father believe that I care about it. And if my father thinks that I care about it, then my father thinks that I'm growing up in his footsteps. If you own a company, and you want that company to stay in the family, I did a bris today up in the hills. Beautiful view overlooking the valley, the mansions. Almost, it was breathtaking. I think it was called
Sunset, right?
No, it was on the other side of Sunset. I think it was called Royal Oak, the neighborhood.
Oh, wow.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah, wow, holy moly.
Yeah, it's breathtaking. Royal Oak, they had this infinity pool, and the view from the infinity pool was down on these breathtaking mansions. Way off Sepulveda, yeah. So the woman, the owner of the house, I'm talking to her afterwards. Yeah, how long have you lived in this house? Beautiful. And she tells me how long she's lived in it. And she says that her husband passed away 7 years ago. And now she's in the home alone. And I said, that's amazing. You stayed in the home. I said, I wanted to tell her, I understand. I empathize. I feel sorry that you lost your husband. I said, my mother couldn't stay in the house. So when my father, should rest in peace, when he passed away, my mother was out of that house within the year. She couldn't stay in the house. It was too much. It was too many memories, too much. And she said, no. Everywhere I look, I see him, and it's joyous memories. I said, wow, that's the right attitude. That's the right attitude. And then she says, besides, this home is our family's. I want it to stay in the family for generations. That's what she said. For generations. I didn't have the heart to tell her, you have no idea what these kids are going to do with this home when you die. This home could be gone 3 days after you're dead. You don't know. They got generations. The only way is if you put this house in a trust and you legally bind it to them. Otherwise, please, this house, you want to stay in the home for generations. What if they all end up moving? Okay, regardless. But let's say you had a family business. And you wanted to hand that business over to the next generation. You want to stay it in the family. You want to keep it. You want it to be a dynasty. You want it to be an empire. You want it to stay in the family. And you built it. And you got 3 sons. Or in this case, you have 2 sons. Which one are you going to give it to? What are you going to... I'll make them both CEO? There's no such thing. That's guaranteed that company's going to split in half. You're going to have to make one of them in charge. Which one? Well, if one of them shows that they have a passion for this industry, if one of them shows that they care about the industry, they're always asking, Dad, why do you do it this way? Why do you sell it that way? Why do you make it? He's clearly interested. He clearly understands the business. You're going to hand the baton to him. And that's exactly what Esau understood. Esau understood, I know how to manipulate my father. I know how to ask him the right questions. I know how to show him that I'm interested. Whereas Jacob, it says he was a wholesome man who dwelled in the tents. He just kept to himself. He seemed like just, he liked his world, like living in his world. How are you going to take? He's not interested. And so sure enough, Isaac loved Esau. But that doesn't explain why does Rebekah love Jacob then? And so we have to go a little deeper. It wasn't just that Isaac looked at Esav and said, oh, he loves the business. Isaac's not that superficial. Isaac also looked a little deeper. And he looked at his two sons, and he saw Esav was a hunter, a man of the field. Jacob is a wholesome man, a man who dwells in the tents. And there's another way to understand that word tam. In the Hebrew, he was an ish tam. Tam literally means pure. Tamim, pure gold. But there's another understanding. When something is pure, there's no blemishes. There's no outside factors. There's no exposure to anything other than that. And you know what that can lead to? A certain sense of naivete.
From the Seder,
a certain sense of naivete. And Isaac understood that what's my family business? My family business is carrying on the mantle of Abraham. My family business is seeing to it that the world knows that there's a God. That the world knows that there is Hashem, there's one God, one Creator, and a relationship is to be had with Him. That's my family business. And therefore, in order to do that, I've got two sons. I've got one son, Jacob, who dwells in the tents. And what does that mean, he dwells in the tents? All he does is sit and learn about how to have a relationship with the Almighty. And you'd think on the surface, that would be the one. But he says no. Why? Because he's an ish tam. There's a certain naivete about him. All he understands is living in the tent. And our family business is not to share God with whoever comes into the tent. Do you remember last week, I think we spoke about this, or 2 weeks ago, I forget when we spoke about it. What's the difference between Abraham? Oh no, we spoke about it last week. Remember, who did Rebecca go to ask? What's going on with my pregnancy? She went to the yeshiva of Shem and Aver. She went to the school that taught people how to have a relationship with the Almighty. And I asked, well, why aren't they the father of the Jewish people? Why aren't they the ones who created this nation? And the answer was very simple. Because they were willing to share the Almighty with whoever came into their door. Whereas Abraham said, no, my job is to go out and share the Almighty with the world. And therefore Isaac is looking at Jacob and saying, yes, Jacob understands how to have a relationship with the Almighty. But he understands it within the confines of the tent. He doesn't understand it in the world. How's he going to share that with the world? How's he going to understand what it's like to come and have a relationship with the Almighty when you can't pay your rent? How's he going to understand how to share the Almighty with someone whose child is born with some kind of debilitating disease? How's he going to know how to share that concept of a relationship with the Almighty when a person's in pain? Jacob has no pain. He sits. Whereas Esav is a man of the world. Esav understands the game. He understands the game of life. He understands what the world's all about. And at the same time, even within that context of the game of life, he seems to care about a relationship with the Almighty. Now he's misleading his father. We'll see, perhaps. We'll see later that his father knows exactly who he is. But that's later. But he seems to have understanding of the world and at the same time expressing an interest in wanting a relationship with the Almighty. Therefore, you know who needs to carry the baton? Esav. And that's why it says Isaac loved Esav. So then why did Rebecca love Jacob? Because one woman stepped out. Now, praise women. Because if there's one thing that women understand far greater than any man, and that's relationships. If you have to sum up the essence of a woman, the essence of a woman is a relationship being. That is what they are. They are a relationship being. Everything they do is about relationship. Everything they do is built on the foundation of relationship. I don't know if I shared this with you, but I'll share with you again. A colleague of mine demonstrated it so beautifully. A colleague of mine, he does marriage seminars. And he would do it with small groups. He would do it with 5 couples. And then he went on and he started doing it with large seminars. But he couldn't do this exercise that he only does in a smaller seminar with 5 couples. And this is the exercise he does. He wants to demonstrate the difference between men and women right at the beginning of the seminar. So he separates them into 2 groups. The 5 men on one side of the room and the 5 women on the other side of the room. Not to say that you're women, just we're playing the game here. So he puts the 5 men and the 5 women, and he hands them each a clipboard with a list of questions. About 10, 15 questions, we'll say. And he says, each group, I want you to pick a spokesperson, a head of your group, and I want you to go through these questions, and then afterwards we're going to share our answers, and I'll ask the spokesperson to speak. Okay? And he gives them about 5-7 minutes. And he gives them the clipboard, and they go through the questions. And after about 7 minutes, 7 to 10 minutes, he gives them a little longer than the time. He says, all right, fine. And he gets them together, and he says, okay, men, do you have a spokesperson? He'll be the spokesperson. And then he says, great, you're the spokesperson? We'll be right back with you. And then he turns to the women. He says, women, do you have a spokesperson? Sure. Julie. Julie, you're the spokesperson? Yeah. Okay, Julie, before we go to the questions on the clipboard, what's the name of the woman sitting next to you? And Julie goes, oh, that's Pam. Pam. Who's Pam's husband? Oh, Pam's husband is Mark in the blue shirt. They have 2 kids. They've been married 5 years. Ah, what's the woman next to her? Oh, that's Sue. She's only been married 1 year. She's married to Bob over there. They don't have any kids yet. Meanwhile, what's the man's spokesperson doing? He's like, nowhere on this clipboard did it say get anyone's name. Quick, what's your name? Which one's your wife? Which one are you? He's like, quickly, what's your name? No, come on, it wasn't on the list. What's your name? What's your name? What's your name? Why? Because what happened when they handed them the 2 clipboards? Well, the women took the clipboard, and before they even looked at the questions, what's your name? Meanwhile, what did the men do? They took the clipboard, and what did the spokesperson do? He says, all right, I'll be the spokesperson. All right, here we go. All right, question 1. Right? The married guy gets it.
Yeah,
Question 1, question 2. Okay, great. Well, all right, we finished the questions. You guys see that game last night? Any of you guys been to that new restaurant on Pico? Wait, did you ask anyone their name? It wasn't on the list. Before the women even move forward, what do? Immediately, I'm going to be in a group with 4 other women. I got to connect. Men, I got to be in a group with 4 men. What's our task? Let's get it done. Because the essence of a woman is relationships. That is what they are built on. That's all they understand. And therefore, Rebecca, she's not looking at Jacob and Esav in terms of their skills as to who should handle the mantle. They're looking at who's able to build relationships. Who understands relationships? That's Jacob. My son Esav, I love him dearly. But he's a little manipulative. Someone who's manipulative does not understand relationships. They might understand people, but they don't understand relationships. Because if you understand relationships, then you understand that manipulation never builds a relationship. And she looks at her son Esav and says, I love him dearly, but he's not going to build relationships. My son Jacob is going to build relationships. And therefore, if anyone is going to be the one that's going to pass on this mantle to the next generation, it's only going to be someone that can build relationships. And that's my son Jacob. She understood. And sure enough, however, this is going to create a tremendous rift. Yeah.
How do you know Jacob could build a relationship?
Well, I know that from the stories. It's really simple. We have Abraham. Abraham is going to have 2 wives that do not get along. Abraham's going to have 2 sons that do not get along. Only one of those sons is going to take the mantle of leadership, Isaac. Isaac is going to have 1 wife, but he's going to have 2 sons. Those 2 sons are not going to get along. Only one of those sons is going to take that mantle of leadership. That's Jacob. Jacob comes along and has not 1, not 2, not 3, 4 wives. Now, before you even go on, unless you say the next sentence, and they wanted to kill each other, you already know this is a man that understands relationships. And he managed to have 4 wives that didn't want to kill each other. Somehow he managed to do something right. But let's go a step further. He had 12 sons. All 12 will carry the mantle of that leadership. He is the only one of the 3 forefathers that was able to pass on the mantle to the next generation. That means he understood how to relate to his children, how to speak to his children, and how to build a relationship with his children.
But how would she know? But at this point in the story,
She's his mother.
What?
Period.
Yeah, but if
She's his mother.
He didn't have wife or kids at that time.
She's his mother.
But Isaac didn't realize this though?
No.
Why didn't he? The man?
he's being manipulated. But
He should still know about it.
during their time growing up,
You know what Rebecca knows.
So he understood. So again, we're going to see when we get to the end that Isaac knows exactly who his son Esau is. But he still felt that to take the mantle of leadership for the Jewish people, that worldly nature was more important. That's what he felt.
He knew Jacob, but he's just...
It was a balance of, it was his decision. He felt that the worldly nature was more important, outweighed the other. But we're going to see that it was, Asa was too far. His manipulation was too far to the other way. As we will go on and see. Uh-oh. I'm slowly losing people. What's happening?
Just a quick question.
Please. But I might choose not to answer it.
Jacob is dwelling in a tent that
Yes.
has 4 corners, and I was wondering if that has any significance.
I'm sure that everything has significance. However, I don't know that his tent has 4 corners.
Just asking. Sorry.
No, it's so good. But I don't know any, and nowhere in the story does it tell me that his tent has 4 corners. Their tents can be round. Okay. Story goes on. Jacob was simmering a stew. And Esau came in from the field, and he was exhausted. And Esau said to Jacob, "Pour me now some of that red stuff, for I'm exhausted." And therefore his name became Edom, red. Oh, he came back. And Jacob said, "Sell me today your birthright." Look at this interaction here. And Esau said, "Look, I'm going to die. What good is a birthright?" And Jacob said, "Swear to me today." And he swore to him, and he sold his birthright to Jacob. And Jacob gave Esau bread and lentil stew, and he ate, and he drank, and he got up, and he left. And Esau despised his birthright. Incredible story here. So what's happening here? Jacob is making some stew. First question you have to ask is, who cares? Who cares that Jacob's making a stew? Like I've told you guys, first and foremost, the 2 things that you have to understand whenever we learn Torah, whenever anyone learns the Jewish Bible, when you learn Torah, there are three things that you have to take in consideration. Number one, it is not a history book. If it was a history book, it is one of the worst written history books ever. It skips over hundreds of years in a few lines, and then will spend paragraphs on seemingly insignificant stories. Number two, it is not a book of law, as what is often misunderstood, because it is a poorly written book of law. It is not in any sequential order. It is not written in any type of format for a law book to be organized. So it is neither a history book nor a law book. It is a book that is instructing us how to live. And therefore, if anything is in the Torah, it is because it's there to teach us something about life. And if we are told that he was making stew, you have to ask yourself the following question. Who cares what he was making?
Yeah.
Because the third point whenever you learn Torah is the third point that I've told you numerous times, and I'll repeat it over and over and over again. Make it real. If you don't make these stories real, then they are no different than Mother Goose rhymes, and you could say whatever you want them to mean. Who cares? You got to make it real. What do we care that he was making stew? But not only does the Torah tell us that he's making stew, at the end of the story it tells us what kind of stew. Lentil stew. I never ate lentil stew.
That's right now. What?
I don't doubt that you have some here.
I kid you not.
So that's the first question. All right, the next question. Look at the next question. He comes in, he's exhausted. He's like, give me some of that red stuff. Red stuff. He doesn't even ask for a stew. He's like, give me some of that red stuff. And therefore his name becomes Red. And not like Shawshank Redemption Red. It's not because he's Irish.
Who makes it up, Jay? Yaakov makes it red?
No, it's red. I don't know. Is lentil stew red? Usually brown, isn't it?
Brown.
It's brown. So, Esau becomes the nation of Edom. The nation of Edom is from Esau. Okay? And so what does Jacob say? His brothers just told him, I'm famished. And his brother, Jacob, says, oh, you're hungry? Sure. Tell me your birthright. This is like 5-year-olds, 10-year-olds. This is what my kids do. My kids, can I have some of that? What will you give me? It's like your sister wants. Just share. What's wrong with... No. Give me your birthright. And then look what Asaph says. I'm dying. What do I care about a birthright? That tells you something about the birthright as far as Asaph's concerned. And then finally, Jacob says, nonetheless, swear to me. Swear. Why is Jacob so insistent that he swears? But then watch what happens. Asaph eats, and then what happens? He gets up, he's fine. And he walks away. Now, I don't know if any of you have ever experienced starvation. If you ask my children, they experience it all the time. But my assumption is that no one in this room has ever experienced starvation. My understanding is probably no one in this room has ever experienced hunger. Baruch Hashem. I bet you've had hunger pain. You've been hungry. No, I'm talking hunger. You haven't eaten for days. That's starvation. You know what the one thing you will not do if you are starving? Is eat and get up as if nothing happened. You will be totally without energy. You'll probably need hydration. You'll probably be sitting in a hospital bed with an IV. And they probably wouldn't even feed you solid food. Because you could die if they fed you too much solid food, if you're actually starving. Yeah. So clearly Asaph's not starving. He eats, he gets up, he's fine. But he says, I'm starving. What's going on here? Well, let's start with step by step. The reason we care what kind of stew it is because that tells us what day it is. It tells us what was going on that particular day. Because lentil stew is a meal that you eat when you are in mourning. It is food that you eat in mourning because it's a round bean. And when people die, the custom was to eat something round because that demonstrated the concept of the circle of life. That even though their life in this world has ended, life goes on. Not only our lives go on, but their life goes on. It doesn't end. It's the circle of life. They are only passing to the next stage. And therefore the custom was to eat lentil stew. There was a funeral that day. And you know whose funeral it was? It was Abraham's funeral. Not only is it the man who was the pillar of humanity. It's like when Ronald Reagan died, not political, but when a president of the United States dies, the whole country stops. Your pillar of humanity has died. And where's Esav? Out hunting. Pillar of humanity dies and he's out at the amusement park. And it's not just any pillar of humanity. It's his grandfather. Your grandfather dies and you're at Knott's Berry Farm. Well, the lines are going to be empty. The president died. Well, the hunting is going to be good today. Everybody's going to be at Grandpa's funeral. What is wrong with him? That already gives you an insight into where this person is. A narcissism that is beyond comprehension. A total lack of thought of anyone but himself. And therefore he comes home and he sees what Jacob is eating. And he says, what? Give me the red stuff. Why does he identify the color of it? Because a person who cares about the physical world is going to care about physical characteristics of the world. A person who loves cars purely for the sake of loving cars is going to care about the curves and care about the aerodynamics. They're going to care what it feels like at 140 when there is no way that person will probably ever get that car to 140. I saw an interview of someone talking about motorcycles. This person started a motorcycle company, a motorcycle aficionado. So loves motorcycles, so started a motorcycle company. And he was interviewed, quote, as saying that this baby can handle the road with no shake at 180. Motorcycle. And the interview asked, have you ever gone that fast? Oh, no. Never gone that fast. Who cares that it can handle it at all? He doesn't know, oh, look at the color of that stew. That's beautiful. Esav cares about the physical world to the extent that that is his obsession. And so what does Jacob say? Jacob says, sell me the birthright. Jacob looks at Esav at this moment and says, how is it possible that you are going to be the mantle of leadership for what our family's business is? Our family's business is to teach the world about meaning, to teach the world about a concept of the Almighty, and you care about the color of the stew on your grandfather's funeral day? You can't be that leader. You can't. You don't have what it takes. Forgo it. Abdicate is the term, if you're familiar with the kings in England. The Queen's father, the Queen of England's father now, was the king. But he was the younger brother. Because the older brother didn't want to be king. Why? Because he wanted to marry a particular woman that he would not be allowed to if he was king. They had rules. And therefore he cared more about this woman than being the king. So he abdicated. He's like, you know what? I relinquish my right to the throne. Love. And so that's what Jacob is saying to Esau. Jacob is saying to Esau, this isn't a 5-year-old spat. Oh, sure, I'll give you some of my, I'll give you some of the watermelon, but you give me, Can I read your book? This goes on in my house. Can I read your book? Well, sure, if I can have your candy. You're not reading the book. Let me read the book. You're not eating the candy. Let me eat the candy. This is what happens in my home. That's not what was going on. Jacob is looking at Esau and saying, look at what you care about. Give it up. I want you to give up the right to take the mantle of leadership. You're the firstborn. And by right, you are allowed the baton of leader. But you should pass it up. You don't care about it. And so look at what Esau says. Esau says, I'm going to die. What do I care about birthright? And with that sentence, Esau is telling us something that you hear people say all the time. Because what is Esau looking at when he looks at the birthright? What's the birthright? The birthright is not just to take the business. It can be part of the business. You know what he's saying? He's saying, I don't want the responsibility. I don't want the responsibility. Why? Because it'll kill me. I'm going to die. You want me more stress in my life? And what is the responsibility of leadership for our people? Well, we're going to be a nation of priests. You know what that means? That means one day we're going to have a temple. And you know what Esau's saying? What do I care about a temple that's going to happen in 100, 200, 300 years from now? I'll be dead. What do I care what's happening to the world? I'll be dead. I one time heard a rabbi speak, and he said something so brilliant. He said it is clear that about the future. He says, if Americans really cared about the future, then they would see to it that there's no debt. In one generation, they could wipe it out. There's enough wealth in this country. But they don't. They don't care about the future. What do they care about? They care about the next 2-3 generations. They want to make sure that their children, their grandchildren, maybe their great-great-grandchildren. And therefore, they want to hold on to that wealth. But they obviously don't care past that. Why? Who cares? It'll be 5, 6, 7 generations from now. What difference does it make? I'll be dead, my kids will be dead, my grandkids will be dead. So America will, at one point, finally, it will fall unto itself. The debt will become so great that the economy will collapse and America will crumble. Okay, look, it happened before, it'll happen again. They don't care. And that's what Esau's saying. Esau's just saying what people are living with. He's the only one who's being real. He's saying it. What do I care what's going to be in the future? I'll be dead. That's the first thing he's saying. But then he's saying something even deeper. You know what else he's saying? He's saying, what is your birthright all about? A connection with the Almighty? A connection with the Infinite? When? When will I finally see that that's real? When I'm dead? I ain't buying it. Esau says, straight out, life is here and now. Why should I care about a birthright that only talks about what happens after the here and now?
So was he an atheist?
He wasn't an atheist, but he didn't believe in the infinite world that's going to be. Eat, live, be merry, for tomorrow we die. Period.
So why was he upset when he lost it?
Oh, very
He
good
should-
question.
yeah.
Very good question. So Jacob says, fine, you really feel that way? You're really articulating what I just said. Swear. Why? Because a person like you will say something today and say something totally different tomorrow. And therefore, I can't trust you. You need to swear. You need to swear that it's gone, that it's not yours. And Asaph says, fine, I swear. And the moment he swears, he realizes he just gave it up forever. And there is nothing more bitter in life than a lost opportunity. The greatest struggle, every single guy in this room who's single, you know what your greatest struggle is? Your greatest struggle is not whether or not you decide to marry whatever girl you're with. Now, that's not your greatest struggle. Your greatest struggle, are you finally ready to stand up and be mature enough to say no to everyone else that you think is possible?
Wow, you just read me.
Because to hold on to that possible, the possibility that it might happen, the possibility is so tantalizing. I love her, of course I love her. But what if?
70% divorce ratio, right?
And Esav finally says, there's no what if. It's gone forever. Gone. Yeah, I swear. I give it up. I give it up. It's like the girl you're with says, look, it's either now or never. Okay? I'm getting on a plane. I'm going to New York. Are you coming with me, or are you telling me to stay? And both of those better have a ring. And you say, look, why don't we just think about this? And she just says, okay, I'm gone. And she gets on the plane, and it's at that moment that you think to yourself, what the blank? And that's why he despises it. Because he knows, I just gave it up. And now I know it's real. Yeah.
So, my question is, if he's the type of person that's going to change his word, who cares if he swore? Like, he's not...
So that answers his question.
There's no binding contract.
So, no. Everybody has their moral code. It's like, yeah, like I love movies, and now I'm going to be global with movies, right? Have you ever seen the movie? Good, now I forgot the name of it. No, it is a mob movie. How'd you know it was a mob movie? It's a mob movie by the Coen brothers.
Bronx Tale?
Huh?
Bronx Tale?
No, that's not the Coen brothers. Oh shoot!
What year?
I don't know.
I'll switch it
Who
up.
played?
Oh, Miller's Crossing. You ever seen Miller's Crossing?
Definitely didn't.
Huh? It's an older movie. I don't know if it's rabbinically friendly, so I can't tell you to watch it. But should you choose to watch it, it's probably one of the best mafia movies. It really is. It's brilliant. It's brilliant.
Don't smoke, but it's the best thing ever to smoke.
Right. The opening scene. The Coen brothers are very creative geniuses. That was grammatically stupid. They're very creative geniuses. So, the opening scene is this mafia guy, and the opening scene is, quote, ethics. That's the opening word in the movie, ethics. What I'm talking about is ethics. And then he goes on to say how if you pay to fix a fight, then the fight should be fixed. Ethics. I'm talking about ethics. Values, morals. What's wrong with people? You pay to have a fight fixed, the fight should be fixed. Ethics. It's like amazing. Here's a guy that would kill for note. I mean, it's not a real person, but that's the concept. Like, but yet he's like, how dare you? I paid you to throw the fight. What's wrong with that? How dare you? So he has a certain line. Okay? It's like in the movie Casino. Definitely not a rabbinically friendly movie. Don't watch it. But if you did watch it, then you know what I'm talking about. The movie Casino, where the mafia guy says to the Italians, it's a Jew and an Italian, okay? Right? Robert De Niro's character is a Jew, and Joe Pesci's an Italian. Robert De Niro's character is a Jew who's making lots of money for the Italians, and they got the thug there to keep an eye on the Jew, okay? And then things start to go awry. I'll give them the whole movie away because you shouldn't watch it. It is not rabbinically friendly. I watched it before I was a rabbi, in case you were thinking. So, okay, and then the head mafia guys, these old men just sitting in wheelchairs in the middle of the country, they call up the guy who's there to keep an eye on the thug, and they say, listen, what's going on over there? We think things are getting out of hand. Okay, and then he says, and we're hearing that he's messing around with the Jew's wife. Now, that's not going to be good if that's true. You hear? Here are people, the mafia, who have no sense of right and wrong when it comes to law. But you don't mess with a man's wife. That you just don't do. You don't mess with a man's wife. Everyone has their moral code. Esav has no moral code when it comes to manipulating the world. But you swear, you give your word in front of the Almighty, I swear, he knows that's real. He knows it's real.
So he does believe in?
Of course.
Of course.
But he doesn't think that applies to it's how to win friends and influence people. It's how to win friends and influence people. Of course you have to lie in business. How are you supposed to get ahead?
So can you just go to the next day and be like, okay, well, I lied, I mean, I just
No, I swore.
But
I swore.
Have you read the book? Is
That's
it
a line in
actually
the sand.
Huh?
Have you read the book? Is it actually manipulative?
I said so.
No, I'm seriously curious.
I've read it. I've read it. It's definitely manipulative.
When he
It's definitely manipulative.
You have to remember what everyone's saying. That's not manipulative.
you're saying he's not king anymore.
No, but why are you doing it? Yeah.
He's
Huh?
not, he gave up his being king, but he's still up there. You know what I mean? He still has power, and he's
Who?
not gonna be like a homeless guy on the street.
Who?
You know what
Esav.
I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, but he gave up the birthright.
Did they say like a
He gave up the birthright. He knows. He now
doesn't
knows.
have
Jim.
that-
He doesn't have that anymore.
What?
They both partners.
He doesn't have that.
Yeah,
It's like
That was the hope, but it doesn't work out.
it's like King Harry and whatever's his name.
King
is.
Harry?
Whatever.
Prince Harry.
I'm saying like the brother still has.
Yeah, he's going to be wealthy the rest of his life.
Wait a second.
But he knows he just gave up eternity.
Sure.
He just gave up eternity.
Okay.
You know, it's like the old TV show, The Price is Right. Right? All right, you just won $50,000 and a vacation house and this, that, the other. Okay, and you got window number 2. And window number 2 is this living room package, etc. Oh, it's all this. Okay, now you can keep the living room package. All those winnings you got, you get to keep. Now the question is this additional winning, the living room package. Do you want to keep that, or do you want to go for window number 3?
It's a mystery.
And the audience is screaming, 3, go for 3, go for 3, because they don't give 2 squats about this guy. They want to know what's behind window number 3. So they're screaming and egging him on, go 3. And his one family member is getting drowned out going, keep the living room, keep the living room. But they can't hear him. And he said, the 3, go for 3. And he goes, all right, window number 3, let's see it. Let's see the Hawaiian vacation. And it's a goat.
So you're saying he chose the goat?
He chose the goat. Now, he kept all his other winnings, but he lost out. Kept the goat. All right. One last question, yeah.
Did they ever get along through their childhood? Because you said
Yaakov and Esav?
you said Yaakov's good at
Of course, they must have gotten along. They're brothers. It's not possible that they hated each other every moment. However, The reality is now it's too late. Now that they've grown up, there's a friction that cannot be severed, that cannot be mended. And the rabbis in the Talmud tell us, Esav Sainei et Yaakov, that Esav hates Yaakov, not the other way around. Esav hates Yaakov.
So he can't even say anything to like change his mind. Just like,
We'll see the end of the story. We're just beginning the story. Gentlemen, we're just starting. It's going to get juicy. Yeah. I said last question.
Sorry. It says that the older must bow to the younger, right?
No, we didn't get to that.
No.
Oh, no. Yeah. Okay, yeah.
So, I mean, it was impossible for Esau to achieve.
No. If he had subdued his character, if he had gotten in
It's
check.
already said in the stars. It's done.
No, it's that was where were we at the beginning of the class?
But that was also the prophecy that they're
There in the beginning of the class. In the beginning of the class was nature versus nurture. You're not born that way. He doesn't have to be that way. He's able to challenge it, to channel it. He's able to direct it. Does Esav have a power of might? Yes. Esav goes on to become Rome.
It just doesn't make sense.
Esav goes on to become Rome. Rome, you know what happened in Rome? The trains ran on time.
I know.
Rome built plumbing. Rome built a world economy. Rome built an empire. Okay? But you know what else Rome did? Is they swallowed the world and therefore they themselves got swallowed.
I just don't.
If Esav understood that his power is in building, but his power does not lie in how, where, when to build. His power is in implementation. But if he had subdued the desire to be, no, I got to be the one, and said, you know what, Jacob? You have the wisdom to know how I should implement, then they could have built the world. But he said, no, I want to be. You know what the greatest entrepreneurs understand? That they are not a CEO.
Not an army of one.
They understood, I am not a CEO. You know what I need to do? I need to bring in a businessman here. Bill Gates did not build Microsoft on his own. He understood, I need someone who understands business.
I'm just trying to think, because I know that Jacob and Esau were supposed to run the world together, the two powers, right?
Mm-hmm.
The priestly power and Rome.
Yep.
So, which one would have been on top, the priests or Rome? If it would have
Jacob.
worked out.
Jacob.
So Jacob would have been on top.
Would have been on top.
So it didn't matter if he kept the birthright or not.
No. It would have mattered in a sense that he would have maintained the royalty, he would have maintained the leadership, but just because we had a king, when we had a king, and even though we had a monarchy, it wasn't the all-powerful monarchy.
I see what you're saying.
It was a balance of powers in some level.
He gave up his participation in it.
Yeah.
I got it.
Gave up his participation in it. It's like,
So
nah.
Jacob had a birthright as well too. He just attained Esau's as
That's
well.
right. He took Esau's as well.
So okay, I see what you're saying.
Okay? All right.
That's supposed to be manipulative.
Thank you, Rabbi.
How did he swear and how did he sell his birthright?
No, that's what I explained already. That was his moral code. That was his point where...
But like,
that was his
my dad
point.
says,
No, that was...
I didn't say when.
No, that was his point, I swear. I give it up. No, he said today. He said, swear to me this day, today. You give it up today. Today, how you doing?
How did he sell it? With like money or just...
No, I swear it's yours. I relinquish it.
That's it?
I relinquish it.
Alright.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching.
Question to ask.
Subscribe.